everyone. I'm Laura Podesta. Thanks for joining us. The Pentagon says it has no plans to pull U.S. troops out of Iraq. That's according to Secretary of Defense Mark Esper on Monday. He made that statement after a draft letter from a Marine Corps general suggested the U.S. was preparing to reposition troops ahead of a possible withdrawal. Iraqi lawmakers passed a resolution Sunday calling for all foreign troops to leave the country. But as David Martin reports, the U.S. is not changing its policy anytime soon.
Iraq's acting prime minister met with the U.S. ambassador to discuss how to implement the resolution, which is not yet binding. But Defense Secretary Esper, talking with reporters off camera, said the U.S. is staying.
There's been no decision whatsoever to leave Iraq. There is no decision to leave, nor do we issue any plans to leave or prepare to leave.
Rumors of an American pullout were sparked by the draft of a letter from an American general to his Iraqi counterpart about measures to ensure that the movement out of Iraq is conducted in a safe and efficient manner. But the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Mark Milley, disowned the draft.
It was a mistake, an honest mistake, a draft, unsigned letter, because we are moving forces around and we have increased helicopter movement in Iraq.
The pullout would mean the end of the campaign against ISIS, which for now is suspended as the U.S. reinforces and repositions the 5,000 troops inside Iraq to protect against the threat of attacks in retaliation for the drone strike which killed Iran's top general, Qasem Soleimani. U.S. military bases all over the world are tightening security, including Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which just sent thousands of paratroopers rushing to the Persian Gulf. Brianna Ferry's husband was one of them.
We thought it was a drill at first, and then he called and said, "Hey, you need to come say goodbye to me. I don't know when I'm going to be back."
And President Trump threatened Iraq with new sanctions on Monday. He says the consequences would be, quote, like they've never seen before if the country follows through on asking U.S. troops to leave. The White House is now trying to ease concerns of lawmakers as House Democrats plan a vote to limit the president's military action in the region. Weijia Jiang has the latest.
Back at the White House after his Florida vacation, President Trump today dismissed fears of a brewing world war and defended his decision to kill Soleimani.
He should have been taken out a long time ago, and we had a shot at it, and we took him out. And we're a lot safer now because of it.
The president has also not backed down from his threat to respond to further Iranian aggression by targeting 52 Iranian sites, including some important to the Iranian culture. Attacking cultural sites could be considered a war crime under international law. Today, Secretary of Defense Mark Esper said the U.S. would not do it.
We will follow the laws of armed conflict.
Esper is the third senior administration official to publicly contradict Mr. Trump.
He didn't say he's targeting cultural sites.
President Trump didn't say he'd go after a cultural site. Read what he said.
On Face the Nation, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also insisted all the president's national security advisors were on board with the strike against Soleimani.
There was unanimity that we were making the right decision.
But CBS News has learned some military commanders were opposed because of possible retaliation by Iran.
Weijia Jiang joins me from the White House. We're also joined by David Martin. He's at the Pentagon. Weijia, let's start with you. As we mentioned, Iraq's parliament voted to expel U.S. troops. Is the White House concerned about the national security implications of such a move?
Well, Laura, that is a big if that the White House and President Trump are not acknowledging as a possibility yet at this point. In fact, on his way back here to the White House from his Florida vacation aboard Air Force One, President Trump talked about this to reporters, and he said, look, we're not going anywhere. He said that there's a very expensive base there that the U.S. paid for, and said we are not leaving unless they pay us back for it. And he also said if Iraq does asks us to leave, if we don't do it in a, quote, very friendly basis, we will charge them sanctions like they've never seen before, ever, and it'll make Iranian sanctions look somewhat tame. And, of course, we know that those Iranian sanctions have crippled the entire economy, and we've watched that play out in a pretty heartbreaking way. So the president here is saying that, you know, we're not going anywhere, and even though the parliament has issued this vote, for now, just like we heard tonight from his Secretary of Defense, there are no plans in place to actually remove those troops, because if it did happen, certainly, yes, there would be extreme national security concerns.
And like you mentioned, that quite a threat. David, a defense official told CBS News the next 24 to 36 hours could be critical in terms of whether Iran intends to follow through on its vows of revenge. So what type of retaliation could Iran be considering, and what security measures are U.S. officials taking?
Well, there's a whole range of actions that Iran could take. The worst case would be to fire a ballistic missile from Iran across the Persian Gulf at the bases where U.S. planes are located. That would be a direct attack from Iran against United States interests, and would almost certainly draw a large U.S. military response. Then you have the threat, which is probably more likely and more immediate, that the Iranian-backed militias in Iraq will start attacking the bases where U.S. troops are located. They can shell them with rockets. That's really what set off this current cycle of escalation, when it was about 10 days ago, a Shiite militia fired 31 rockets into a base where about 100 U.S. troops were located, and killed one. And that sparked this series of events that we've seen so far. The final thing they could do is an eye for an eye, assassinate or try to assassinate an equivalent American official to Qasem Soleimani.
So, Weijia, do we know the White House's strategy for downplaying that sort of fear of war waging, as well as responding to concerns from lawmakers over the use of military force?
Well, we've seen it already, especially in what President Trump himself has said, which is that this attack on Soleimani was simply a response to an attack on the U.S. embassy and the killing of an American. And so at this point, they say the ball is in Iran's court, but they don't anticipate something as extreme that would kill more Americans, even though they say they are prepared for an attack like that. They also say, sources here tell me, that they are not concerned because they really believe Iran can't afford it because they are already in that dire situation with the tensions there and with the sanctions already in place. And so they do not believe Iran would be willing to go there. Of course, that's certainly not what some advisors are saying, and what some Democrats are saying is that this is a very precarious situation for the U.S. But the president insists that this action makes Americans safer and, reduces the possibility of terrorism playing out here. And so the official position is that they are monitoring, but they are not expecting something that could lead to a world war, because, in blunt terms, they are betting that Iran is smarter than that. However, we just don't know. And as, David has been reporting, these next several hours are extremely critical, and the White House knows that. So despite their optimism about how extreme Iran is willing to be in their response, they know it is a possibility that they have to prepare for.
Meantime, beyond those 24 to 36 hours, Iran says in the future it will no longer follow uranium enrichment limits set in that 2015 nuclear deal. So, David, where does this leave their nuclear program and that deal overall?
Well, it leaves the deal on life support. The Iranians have not completely abandoned the deal. They said they are going to continue to cooperate with the international body that monitors their compliance with the treaty. So we will, at least through these monitors, be able to tell how much more uranium they're enriching. The final blow would be if they kick those monitors out. Then we would lose all of our knowledge about the status of uranium enrichment.
Weijia Jiang and David Martin, thank you both.
Sure thing.